DIBELS Oral Reading Fluency, or also known as DORF. The oral reading component of DORF assesses the student's ability to read connected text fluently and with accuracy. The student reads a passage aloud for 1 minute. The assessor marks errors, which include omissions, substitutions, or hesitations for more than 3 seconds. For each benchmark, there are 3 passages. Each passage is read for 1 minute. However, for progress monitoring, there is only 1 passage. The retail component of DORF assesses the student's comprehension. If the student reads fewer than 40 words correctly, use professional judgment as to whether to administer the retail. The student is asked to retell everything they can about the story. The assessor indicates the number of words in the retail that are related to the text. The retail is a comprehension check. It identifies whether the student reads for meaning. The student must complete the retail without looking at the text, so the assessor should close the book or take it away from the student while he or she retells what they have read. The assessor completes a quality of response rubric based on the student's retail. DORF is administered starting at the middle of the year grade 1 through the end of the year grade 6. Progress monitoring of DORF should be done as needed. Reading comprehension represents the ultimate goal of instruction in the other basic early literacy skills. Reading with fluency and accuracy is linked with comprehension. Oral reading fluency is linked between decoding and reading comprehension. DORF is administered starting at the middle of the year grade 1 through the end of the year grade 6. Progress monitoring of DORF should be done as needed. The benchmark materials for DORF are located in the Assessor Directions and Student Materials book located in your DIBELS kit. The Progress Monitoring materials for DORF are located in the Spiral-Bound Progress Monitoring Assessor Directions and Student Materials book, which is also located in your kit. These are your as-needed reminders for the oral reading fluency component of DORF. You can save these reminders whenever needed. If a student stops reading at any point and it's not a hesitation, say keep going. If a student loses his or her place while reading, point to the next word on the passage. Please take a moment and watch as I demonstrate some of the key features of the assessment. This is Mr. Say. The words in black are the words that you read verbatim. If you'll notice over here, you've got your 3-second hesitation timer. So if a student gets stuck on a word, they're hesitating for 3 seconds, you mark the word incorrect and move on. If you'll notice at the start assessment box here, this is the first word of the selection. If the student reads the word correctly, tap the green button. If they read it incorrectly, tap the red button. Once the button is tapped, the timer will start. The 1-minute timer is located in the gray rectangle at the top right of your screen. Beside it, you see the 3 diamonds that light up blue. This is your hesitation timer. If a student hesitates for 3 seconds, mark it incorrect and move on. If you'll notice, the title is not counted in the word count. Do not read the title to the students. If the student chooses to read the title, do not tap the first word until he or she reads the first word of the passage. If the student asks you to tell him or her a word in the title or struggles with the word in the title for 3 seconds, say the word. It is important that you do not correct any errors the student makes while reading the title. I'm going to tap that the student read the word correctly, and that starts my assessment. If a student reads the word incorrect, you tap the word 1 time. If the student self-corrects, you tap it a 2nd time, and that will mark it as a self-correct. If the assessor makes a mistake and accidentally taps a word incorrect and the student actually read it correctly, tap it a 3rd time and it will go away. If the student skips a line, you can mark this X and it will mark through the entire line and count it incorrect. At 55 seconds, you'll notice that the screen will start to flash yellow. This indicates that the student has 5 seconds left to read. If the student is in the middle of a sentence at the end of 1 minute, allow the student to finish the sentence, but only score the words said up to the end of 1 minute. To finish the assessment, click on the word and hold, and a bracket will appear. That indicates that that's the last word that the student read. So if I make a mistake and place the bracket in the wrong place, all I have to do is hold the word and the bracket will appear. No additional marks can be made once you place the bracket. So if the student read ahead of you, be certain to make your marks before placing the bracket. Tap Done, and that will move you for the student to do the other assessments. During the benchmark administration, you can pause the assessment between the 3 passages if necessary. If the student reads all of the passage before 1 minute has elapsed, allow the timer to run the full minute and scores are not prorated. Here are some of the common scoring rules for DORF. Mark incorrect words that are sounded out but are not read as whole words. If the student makes a mistake with the same word multiple times, each instance is marked incorrect. Do not mark additions or insertions. If a student self-corrects, tap the word, it will turn the word correct. If a student self-corrects, you will tap the word once to mark it incorrect. You will tap it again, and the SC will show up, and it will turn the word green. You do not mark schwa sounds, articulation, or dialect incorrect. There is a 3-second hesitation rule, and if a student misses all words in the first row of the first passage, the device prompts the assessor to discontinue. If a student reads fewer than 10 words correct in the first passage, do not administer retell or passages 2 and 3. Here are some of the scoring rules for DORF. Score incorrect words read correctly, but in the wrong order. For example, my dog has fleas. If the student reads, my flea has a dog, you would mark incorrect, flea, and dog. Score incorrect mispronounced words if mispronounced within the context of the sentence. So if the text reads, I live in town, and the student reads, I live in town, live is marked incorrect. For proper nouns, if a student reads a proper noun with any reasonable phonetic pronunciation, score it as correct. I visited Dubai. If the student reads, I visited Dubai, Dubai is counted correct. Here are some scoring rules for numbers and abbreviations. Score numerals and abbreviations incorrect if spelled out or read number by number. So for example, my dad is 36. If the student reads, my dad is 36, you would mark incorrect 36. For abbreviations, the text reads, Mr. Duck is here. If the student reads, M.R. Duck is here, Mr. would be counted as incorrect. There is an exception with abbreviations. If the abbreviation is read in the way that you would normally pronounce it in a conversation, score it correct. For example, the text may read, may I watch TV? The student reads, may I watch television? You would score TV as correct. So if a student does not read a word exactly as written, score it as incorrect. For example, the girl had ice cream. The student reads, some girls had ice cream. You would mark incorrect the and girl. For contractions, if 2 separate words are read as a contraction, score both words incorrect. So, it is time to go home. And the student reads, it's time to go home. It and is are marked incorrect. If a contraction is read as 2 words, score it incorrect. For example, the text may read, it's time to go home. The student reads, it is time to go home. It is marked incorrect. Please follow along as I show you some of the key features of the passage retell. Here is how to administer the retell portion of DORF. Here's Mr. Say, and he tells me exactly what I need to tell the students. Now tell me as much as you can about the story you just read. I'll click Begin. Mr. Say again. I'll click Start, and the student's going to tell me everything they can tell me about the story. I still have my 1-minute timer. I've got my 3-second hesitation timer, and the student's telling me everything that they've read. And I'm going to click each box for every word that they say that pertains to the story. I'm going to click, and you'll notice that every time I click, this word count goes up. If the student is telling the story and I notice that they're telling irrelevant facts about the story, or they started telling another story, I can go backwards, and that takes away all the words that they said that were not relevant to what I just counted. If the student pauses for 3 seconds, I can click the 3-second pause and tell them, can you tell me any more about the story? A 5-second pause button comes up, and if I tap the 5 seconds after the student has paused for 5 seconds, it will discontinue the assessment. You'll notice that the screen flashed yellow again. That just told me that there were 5 seconds left to the assessment. And if I click Done, I can make no more edits. You'll notice this is your quality of response, and you just tap in the box that indicates the quality of the student's retell. So there are some common scoring rules for the passage retell. If the student does not say a word within 3 seconds, tap the 3-second button. Mr. Say prompts the user with, can you tell me anything more about the story? The 3-second pause button changes to a 5-second pause button. The response timer changes from 3 to 5 dots. Tapping the 5-second pause button brings you to the retell quality of response screen. For the passage retell, you can see here are some of the things that you would count as correct: stating accurate details, contractions, minor repetitions, minor irrelevances, minor inaccuracies. Some things that you would not count would be exclamations, or or songs and recitations, rote repetition of words or phrases like and, stories or irrelevances. For example, if a student says, the boy and his mom went to the grocery store, I went to the store with my mom, that would be a story or irrelevance. I went to the store with my mom, you wouldn't count that. Stating retell details multiple times. So for example, if a student says, the old man lived alone, the man lived all by himself, that's stating the same thing but in a different way, so you would not count both of those. This shows you what the quality of response looks like, and you would just tap which number represents the student's retell as far as the quality of response that they gave. Complete the quality of response rubric immediately after the passage retell component of DORF is completed. Rate the quality of the student's response based on the portion of the passage that the student read. The quality of response score is not used to calculate the DORF score. It is intended to help determine the appropriate instruction. Here are some examples of some passage retells. If you look at example A, this would be considered a 4. There were about 56 words, and the teacher would give this a quality of response score of 4. Example B, there are about 19 words that were counted in this retell, and it would receive a quality of response of 2. Sample C, you would only be able to count 7 of the words as part of their retell because the student started to tell a personal story. so the quality of response would be a 1. In sample D, you would only count 19 of these words because there are some repetitions, and the quality of response would be 2. Here's an example of the scoring screen. An interim results screen appears after the completion of benchmark passages 1 and 2. The accuracy is shown as a percentage, and fluency scores are recorded in words correct per minute, or WCPM. If a student reads fewer than 40 words per minute, use professional judgment about administering retail. If the assessment is discontinued, a score of 0 will be entered for the passage retail. The final score screen appears after completion of the third passage. Scroll down to see the table at the bottom of the screen that lists the student's performance on all 3 passages. Blue triangles indicate the student's median scores for fluency and retail. Please remember the class and student summaries display the median scores only. For those of you who are curious, accuracy is calculated by dividing the median score by the median fluency score plus median number of incorrect words, then multiplying it by 100. The score level bars at the top of the screen show the student's scores for fluency, accuracy, and retail. The student's scores are listed above the score level bars. Median scores are reported for fluency and retail. The position of the runner reflects the distance from the benchmark goal. Numbers below the bar indicate the cut points dividing score levels. On the results screen, you can record additional information about student behavior during the DORF assessment by tapping the Patterns and Motivation buttons. This information will appear on the Probe Detail web report. Here are some things to remember about DORF. Fluency is the measure of words correct per minute. Mark substitutions, omissions, and words read out of order as incorrect. Remove the student materials before starting passage retail. The assessor must commit the details of the text to memory.